Clint Smith is a poet, a teacher, and a Harvard graduate, a man who has received many awards over the years for his amazing speeches in prose. Today I want to relate a speech to you guys that he presented at a TED Talk in the form of a prose, a wonderful form of slam poetry. In this prose, he's going to explore what it means to embrace silence. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in a 1968 speech where he reflects on the civil rights movement, states, "In the end, it is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends that we will remember." As a teacher, I strive to internalize this message. Every day, all around us, we see the dangers of silence manifest themselves in the forms of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore their own silences through poetry. We work together to fill these spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel comfortable sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I have 4 key principles that I have posted on the board in the front of my class, which I have every student sign at the beginning of the year. Read critically, write consciously, speak clearly, tell your truth. I find myself thinking about that last point a lot. Speak your truth. And I realize that if I'm going to ask my students to speak up, I'm going to have to tell my truth. And in order to do so, I must tell them about the times where I failed to do so. So I would tell them, growing up as a kid in a Catholic family in New Orleans, during Lent, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing you could do was to give something up, to sacrifice something that you typically indulge in to prove to God that you understand His sanctity. I had given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, and French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I decided to give up my speaking. I figured the most valuable thing I could give up was my own voice. But I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I spent so much of my life telling people the things that they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed. Sometimes I just wouldn't say anything, as if I had no place to be telling their conscience whenever I was still working on my own. Appeasing ignorance with my silence, unaware that validation doesn't need words to endorse its own existence. When Christian was beat up for being gay, I put my hands in my pockets, put my head down as if I didn't see anything. Couldn't use my locker for weeks because the bolt on the lock reminded me of the one I put on my lips when the homeless man on the corner looked at me with eyes up, merely searching for an affirmation that he was worth seeing. I put my fingers on my apple instead of actually feeding him one. When the woman at the fundraising gala said, "I'm so proud of you. It must be so hard teaching those poor, unintelligent kids," I bit my lip because apparently we needed her money more than my students needed their dignity. We spend so much time listening to the things that people are saying that we rarely pay attention to the things they don't. Silence is the residue of fear. Silence is our flaws, gut-wrench guillotine our tongue. It is the air retreating from our chest because it is scared to be in our lungs. It is Rwandan genocide. It is Katrina. It is the sound you hear when there aren't enough body bags left. It is the sound after the noose has already been tied. It is charring. It is chains. It is privilege. It is pain. There is no time to pick your battles when your battles have already picked you. I will not let silence wrap itself around my indecision. I will tell Christian that he is a lion, a sanctuary of bravery and brilliance. I will ask that homeless man what his name is and how his day was, because sometimes all people want to be is human. I will tell that lady that my kids can speak about transcendentalism like their last name was Thoreau. And just because you watch one episode of The Wire doesn't mean you know anything about my kids. So this year, instead of giving something up, I will live every day as if there were a microphone tucked beneath my tongue, a stage on the underside of my inhibition. Because who needs a soapbox when all you've ever needed is your voice?